All right.
Hey, we've got awesome Caitlin Winnie here. If you've been on any of the journey calls, Caitlin has been on so many of them and has
Mhm.
provided so much insight and just like good lady energy, which I'm digging, but also like all the amazing dudes that are on these calls appreciate as well. And so, yeah, I am really happy. We're both very happy to have you. This was kind of we kind of switched things up, not
Mhm.
to go down any certain paths, but we just had a rough couple weeks, both personally and
Yeah.
nationally, I
Nationally, yeah.
suppose. It's just been a lot. We'll just leave it at
Yeah.
that.
I'm so
And
glad to be here with you guys today with
right,
everything
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
needed it. So originally we were going to have our first call, I guess it was this past Sunday for the
Mhm.
films on food journey, and Aaron and I were just like
We're just tired. Yeah. So,
we're just
um,
so tired. I mean, we both made that sound like, and it's not that we don't want to have this you know we love everybody, and it's not that we didn't want to have the call. It was just more out of you
I think people
know
were okay with it too. Yeah.
yeah, it's I think everybody's just a little spent, so we
Mhm.
decided to shift to having this podcast. Caitlin, you were amazing to agree to that, and
Mhm.
this is just super chill. And then we'll resume with is it Babette's Feast is our next one?
No, it's Jiro Dreams of
Tampopo.
Sushi, and
Tampopo.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
And then Babette's Feast, Alice's Restaurant. We're gonna do like a live
that's right.
event, so it'll be fun. But
And we're
Caitlin,
gonna watch The
yeah,
Last Waltz, which
we
really
are. Yeah,
doesn't have anything to do with food, although they served food at it.
that's why it's food and Thanksgiving. They did serve food at it, as they do in most places. But we can't just let everything
It
in.
was a turkey
Um,
dinner, though.
yeah.
I can't remember how much the tickets were, but they were expensive for the
Hmm.
time. But it included probably a lot of cocaine and
Oh yeah.
turkey and dressing.
Yeah, so
So,
we'll get into the notorious Coke burger. That's a great story. But Caitlin, it's been great. I mean, we're turning one, or we've turned one. CineJourneys has.
I know
So I don't
we're
know
a
if you.
year old. Look at
I
that.
don't
We're
know if
toddling
I
around,
know.
still shitting ourselves. It's been
Yes,
great.
saying weird words. Me especially. I'm learning too. But
Yeah.
Caitlin, I've loved having you on the calls.
oh, thank you.
And it's not just it's not just the gender energy. I mean, although it is
The
nice to
gender
have a.
energy. I love that. Caitlin and I bring a
That's what
gender
I bring,
energy.
gender energy.
Well, I just
Yeah.
meant different, because the elephant in the room a lot of times is, men gravitate towards a lot of cinephile communities. I'd like to strike a balance just with all types of people, what different communities, and I think we've been mostly successful about it. But because we have a podcast about physical media, we get a lot of physical media collectors, great people. I mean, I do not have any complaints about any
And
of our
but it's
our patrons.
majority men.
Lots of
And
dudes.
we Aaron and I I mean, you have to be very if you just kind of like exist and you're kind of going with the flow of things, it's going to be like 99% dudes. That
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
because that's just what
It's
so you
yeah.
really have to be a little more intentional about who you're reaching out to, just because it's a minority in that space. Although there are a ton of women who
Mhm.
are collectors, who are
Oh yeah.
cinephiles. It's just their voices are not there. They're not being amplified. Or they don't know where to go, or maybe they've been pushed out, or maybe they don't feel welcome. And so that's one of the things that we're working like actively every single day, working to buck that trend. And
Right. And I think,
so
it's also important to remember, and I think people forget this, that like statistics frequently show that women are the majority of the movie going audience.
Hmm.
yes.
And yet
That's
we
right.
are so infrequently kind of catered to as the primary, you know, driving force of that
Yeah.
economy.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is such a huge demographic that is ignored, and that goes for, I think, goes for a lot of what the physical media that's coming out. There's
Mhm.
assumptions that, um, you know, women don't like certain kinds of movies, but also they're not putting out a lot of movies that would be more like women's pictures, you know.
Mhm.
But I remember it was several years ago, and my friend Wade Sheeler and I, we were talking about him before the show, but Wade and I we still have the website. It's just kind of like dormant right now, but and we podcasted together. And I remember this was years ago, and it may have even been on Twitter or something, but I came up with a list of like favorite movies, and it was so like dude heavy.
Mhm.
Like it was a lot of like Smokey and the Bandit and
Mhm.
like this, Stagecoach, and like all this like super like masculine and energy, and he was kind of surprised by it, like not because of me, but he was like, it, it just surprised him, and I was like, hey man, chicks love this kind of stuff, they can get
Mhm.
into it for probably different reasons than a lot of the men like it, it's so.
And I think also part of being a, kind of femme identifying lover of film is you have to kind of accept that stuff isn't made for you. So you have to
Right.
find things within those films that
Mhm.
are for you, even though they're not made for you. And I think, today's movies are a great example. Women get short shrift in both of these movies, and
Mhm.
yet we still watch them and we still enjoy them
Absolutely.
because we have
So,
to.
oh,
And
absolutely.
I just really appreciate your takes, period, Caitlin. Sometimes because we do have a male demographic, I do want a woman's perspective, but you bring it, regardless of whether it's a film that needs a woman's perspective or just an everyday film, like a George Cukor. We haven't done that. I'm just throwing that out. But you always have great takes, and
Thank you.
very, very. I'm always looking forward to what you say about a movie. I always want to call on you first. No offense to all of our other founding members and subscribers, but but yeah, you're great. So it's great to have you here.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's been great to have
can we
a film
hear more
sister
about her?
there, like,
Yeah.
so I guess we'll kind of dive. So the two films that we're covering this
Well,
week.
can we
Oh, go ahead.
introduce Caitlin?
Oh,
Caitlin, can you tell us
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
yourself? I mean,
yeah.
you're more
Okay,
than
yeah.
just a
So,
subscriber.
yeah, I'm a subscriber to CineJourneys. I've been with you guys since the Japanese journey in May.
Okay.
I am a pretty new cinephile. I grew up loving movies and I grew up Oscar obsessed, but the love of film kind of got away from me for a really long time. And it's been in the last 3 years that my lifestyle has changed in a way that I have time and access to so much cinema that I've never seen before. And I've really made a commitment I try to watch a movie a day. So I'm like catching up on 100 years of film history as quickly as I can. And it's just been just a great joy the last few years to be able to return to this hobby of
awesome.
mine.
That's
It's
great. Yeah.
never too late to dive into that. So that's amazing. I love that.
Forgot you missed our award season, so I did. Yeah, so you were right on the edge of that. So yeah,
Mhm.
that was a blast. So you're gonna love it this year.
I'm looking forward to that.
It's what I just saw
So
Nora. Ooh, we're gonna have
Really
some
good.
discussions. Yeah, but we're here to talk about food. I like food.
Yes.
yeah, well,
Food
like
is
food.
good.
So
Do you like
Aaron
food?
and I. Oh yeah, we need food. We love
We
food.
do.
So we have this lineup
Well,
for
green is food. Sorry.
the food and films about food. I can't remember the
Food's
wording we
about
had.
film.
Foods about film, yeah. And so the first two are about the food industry, about
Mm.
working in food service, and a chef and Big Night. Before we get into those, I just wanted to we could maybe discuss about the culture of food and cuisine and cinema, and maybe get into a little bit of that. I don't know if y'all have some ideas about or think about, and it doesn't even have to be a film about food, but like think about films that is a like a meal is like the first thing that I thought of was the movie The Last Supper. And I can't remember, maybe 1993, 92. And the whole premise is you have a group of college educated uh, uh, liberals who decide to invite all of these people that they find abhorrent, for morally, politically, ethically abhorrent, and they invite them over for a dinner where they basically give the person the opportunity to state their case, and they basically give them a fair shot, knowing that they're going to kill them at some point in the meal. And
I think I know.
so,
Are you talking about the menu?
no, The
Oh,
Last
okay.
Supper.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You said that.
It's
Sorry. Yeah. The
The
menu
Last
is a
Supper.
similar plot. Yeah.
And they kill these people. And so I was thinking, it's a great movie. It's great. A little independent thing, and it has a little funny turn, a little twist. But so I was just thinking about, and so all of those different movies were coming in where it's not necessarily, I mean, it's usually using literally supper in the title, but it's really not about food at all, right? And so I was curious if there's any scenes or films that stick out to you when you're thinking about food, sharing food, the culture of food, and cinema.
Well, I immediately think of Vera Hitalova's Daisies,
Yeah.
which is not, it's different from the films we're going to be talking about in this journey, in that it's not about the preparation of food or the consumption of food for pleasure, but it uses food as a prop and a tool to subvert power dynamics in gender and class structures. And like that, the scene at the end where they destroy the banquet.
Yeah.
I think about all of the work, the production work of setting that table and making all of that stuff just for these two women to destroy it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just such an interesting way to use food in, not as
a political statement.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
politics it's so great.
That's the Checkmate Wave was really something special, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
I love those films, and her
I mean, emerging out of that, and that movie is so special.
I love it.
Yeah, and and you even think about like just conversations, like even in like a noir, where gosh, it's one with Linda Darnell. I don't know if it's Where the Sidewalk Ends, but it's one of the Fox noirs with Linda Darnell, and she's eating a hamburger like at a diner. I mean, just even conversations that are had where there's food in, it's like food's a part of life. You have to eat. And so when that's incorporated into a film, it can have an impact because we can all relate to it, right? So Aaron, did you have any that
it was Fallen Angel, and
Fallen Angel, thank you very much.
Fallen Angel,
Dana Andrews, Linda Darnell. Yeah.
That was Preminger. Was that Preminger? I forget.
That's Preminger, yeah.
Yeah. Great film. Well, I think food and film is an interesting concept nowadays, because I think just the concept of film is so much grander than it was, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago. Because, I think of The Bear. The Bear is a TV show, and there have been a lot of TV shows about food, about restaurants, and I think, these two films we're talking about are, well, yes, they are about food, and they do have a lot of, excuse the phrase, but food porn. I am craving some timpano, like it is like I'm about to go out of my mind, and I can't eat that stuff. That's bad for me. But the bear, yes, chef, that has become ingrained in our culture, but also celebrity chefs. There's the reality
Right.
TV, and I am not thumbing my nose at any of that. I watch what I can't watch like endless hours. Now, my wife loves that stuff. We will go to restaurants and cities, and she'll be like, "Oh, this person was on Top Chef." So I don't usually know the celebrity chefs. The food is, wow, it's always amazing. So that's why Andrea is steering the ship in terms of reservations. But yeah, I think with modern film, I know these are not exactly modern movies. I mean, I guess Chef is kind of, but I know it's pretty dated too already. But I think modern films, it's really just about the experience, and I think we're seeing more films that talk about the workers. So like Support the Girls I don't know if you've seen that, but that's about like a faux Hooters, and I doubt if they show any much food. It's all about the workplace culture, and it's not like that. When I say it's by was it Regina King? So it's a great movie,
Okay.
actually. I would recommend it, but it's about just like, these are real people, and I'm not gonna. Honora is not about food, but it's fresh in my mind. I just saw it, but that's also about real people. There is a restaurant, and there's a
Well,
restaurant
and
in every
working,
movie.
but working in an industry that is
Yeah,
in a lot of ways is a service industry.
yeah,
Even though probably people would maybe, middle America wouldn't consider that, but I mean, it still is a service
it's huge.
industry.
Yeah. And I
And
waited tables for my formative years. I also I delivered pizzas too, which I guess is also
oh,
a
absolutely.
yeah. Now there's been a lot of weird movies made about that, but the thing is, you can identify. And Jill, I know that you have. I don't think you've worked in restaurants, but
I've never, I've
you can
never worked in a
identify with the
restaurant, but
workers.
I was a cleaning lady. And I'm going to
Hmm.
tell you right now, just like waiting tables, cleaning someone's home, it's that you are, and the women I worked, so I was working multiple jobs. I was still in college, and Thomas and I were about to get married. So I was working multiple part-time jobs, and this was one that I was working. Now, keep in mind, I was from like a solidly middle class family, and but also one that, we weren't rich by any means, but like, I got my first job when I was 16 years old. I was babysitting before that. There's a huge, so it's not that I necessarily needed to have three jobs, but I was trying to save save money. And so one of these jobs I took was as working for this woman that had a cleaning company. But the women that I worked with, they were all from a much lower working class status, and most of them were single moms. They, one income. They were living in, not the greatest part of town, and but like, the camaraderie we had with each other, and that's how we survived dealing with all these it was mainly really snobby rich people. And it's incredibly sobering, especially when we show up at a house that was, some girl I went to private school with's parents. And I'm like, cleaning, the space. And to have those people talk down to you like you're lesser, but then you're in their bathroom, like you're in their
Mhm.
most personal
Yeah.
space, and they're
Wow.
treating you like garbage. And I'm like, dude, I see your pill bottles. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
so it's just and not everyone was like that. Some people were incredibly generous and very grateful. And we did like clean houses for older people that weren't able, and I'm not shaming anyone that hires a housekeeper. It's just, I'm shaming people who treat their housekeepers like absolute
Yeah.
trash. So I never waited a table, but I scrubbed a lot of toilets. And it was like one of those experiences that like I will never never treat a service worker
Mhm.
with disrespect. I don't care how awful they may be, because I know how
Same, yeah.
hard that job is. It's
Mhm.
impossibly hard.
I didn't know that about you, Jill. So we'll hold
Yeah.
that thought. I did a study on
There's
the book
so many
Nickel and Dimed,
stories. Oh yeah.
which is
So
yeah,
I studied, and there's a lot of in a with a
sorry, Caitlin.
modern lens looking back at, and we're talking about Barbara
Aaron Reich,
Aaron
yeah,
Reich.
Aaron Reich,
great book.
which she just died in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Ethically,
hmm
there's it's questionable what
yeah,
she did. But it was for many. I was a sociology degree, and I was a social worker for many years, and that book was kind of like key text. But now looking, it wasn't done the most ethical way. But regardless, treat your service people nicely,
hmm
people. And so we have these two films, Chef and Big Night. And we're going to talk about Big Night first. And these two films are made in, well, Big Night was made in what, 96, I think. Chef came out in the
came out
last 10-ish years or so.
more than that
Um,
actually. Yeah,
was it?
Was it 2013?
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Okay.
2014. So
2014.
exactly, well, I
Okay,
guess it
so
was
10
made.
years. All right. So,
Yeah, that's why it's so weird it's dated, which we'll get to. But yeah,
um,
10 years, time flies.
but Big Night is but both really talk, kind of address the how difficult it is to work in service.
hmm
Um, although I think Big Night really is not about that at all. I think it's about so much more. And so I guess let's just start talking about Big Night. I want to know. This was a first time watch for me. I'm curious, Caitlin, about your experience with this. If this was your first time watch and what you thought.
Yeah, both of these were first time watches for me.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
nice.
I found Big Night to be just so naturally charming. Going in, I looked at the cast and said, "Oh, this is for me."
Mhm.
Stanley Tucci, Tony Shalhoub,
hmm
Minnie Driver, Isabella Rossellini,
It's so 90s.
and
I
It's
love it.
Miramax without being Miramax,
right?
thankfully.
And like I
But it feels
especially
like it.
love, getting to see 1996 Allison Janney, who's
Yes,
still in this
yes, she's
mode
great.
that she never gets to be anymore, which
I
is
know.
soft.
hmm
Right?
Mhm.
Like this is before she's, kind of now just called upon to play like the biggest, brassiest bitch that you can think of.
Mhm.
And this is just
HBIC.
right. Like this is just, it's like her work in American Beauty and Margaret, where it really is
Right.
just like rooted in humanity and not caricature. And that
Right.
made me
She gets
so
to be a
happy.
woman,
Yes.
like just
Yes.
yeah.
She really does. A woman that's wanted, and I love the interplay between her and Shalhoub.
They're so sweet.
Oh
They are,
God.
yeah.
You really believe that there's like a budding intimacy there. They're so
hmm
wonderful together.
Yeah.
The
I
He
scene
really
where
just
is. He's a
she's
great actor
eating with
too.
him when he's cooking,
Oh,
so
I
good.
know.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
no,
it's
and she's
great.
like
Yeah.
practically having an orgasm over what he's made. I mean,
Right.
that was the sex scene. I mean, that
Yes.
hmm
that moment, and he has such a hard time talking to her, but the minute he gets her into his space
Mm-hmm.
and he's able to communicate to her with food,
Mm-hmm.
it
hmm
was the most romantic
Totally.
scene. And you can see like every nervousness just has faded from him because he's in his most comfortable spot. I just felt that was such a beautiful scene, and it was
hmm
basically their bedroom scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, if it was pre-code, or if it was post during the code, that is
yeah,
exactly how. Okay, the
yeah.
sex scene in the script. Let's figure something out. Okay, food.
I mean, other
Yeah.
than the language in this movie,
Yeah.
it really felt like an old Hollywood
hmm
film. It's set in the 1953
Mm-hmm.
or something, early 1950s. And I, you know, just for anybody who
Luckily,
hasn't seen it, it's a it's a struggling restaurant owned by two brothers, Italian immigrants who have been somewhere along the Jersey Shore. They've been here for a couple of years, and they are facing foreclosure on their restaurant. And they have an opportunity to put on one last meal to try to save the restaurant for none other than Louis Prima.
Right.
It was a bit like Waiting for Guffman, like,
Yeah.
you
Or
know,
Godot. I mean, I guess same thing.
yeah, like,
yeah.
you know, the whole time you're like, I don't think this is happening. But it was, you know, really though, the food is so, it's about integrity and not selling yourself out. Believe, you know, even just, but also like these two brothers come here, I'm assuming to pursue the American dream, and they're finding out it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, I found it very touching that they're not, I mean, Secondo is like, could probably be wooed to live a more Americanized lifestyle. He doesn't have as much of an accent. He speaks better English. He's going to the competing restaurant across the street to get help. Primo, no, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
No, he's very stubborn.
I love your background image, and so if you're hearing this on podcast players, you can't see it. Good duck, Jill. So, but the thing is, it's also about brotherly love and obligation.
Yeah.
Even you know, I have siblings. I'm not going to open a restaurant with them for this very reason, because I saw this movie. So this is my second time watch, but it'd been a while, and I think it's interesting that Tucci and Campbell Scott co-directed it. And of course, talking about food TV, Tucci now is basically an institution in TV. And I haven't watched his show, but I've heard it's really good. He has a show, I think he's going around Italy. And I believe I think he's second generation. I think his parents were born in Italy, but I think they moved here at a pretty young age. So he knows that experience. You know, Campbell Scott was just an indie guy. I mean, I shouldn't say just an indie guy. He was a good actor.
90s personified.
He was.
What's the movie he made with Julia Roberts where he's dying of cancer?
I don't know. He's been
it's
in a
like
lot of
Dying
things.
Young or something. It's literally called like Dying Young. I remember just being floored by that movie.
I like his role in this too, selling.
Oh, he's so good.
And that's a great scene when he's trying to sell.
You just gotta bite life in the ass and you know, pull it.
And that's again the American dream. Like, why can't you afford this new car? And there's one, and this is a scene where Campbell Scott's trying to sell Secondo, Stanley Tucci's character, a brand new Cadillac, I believe it was. And not only new, it's the next year's model. And I love how in that scene he says, "Wait, so if I buy it next year, it'll be the year after?" And of course, Scott is just like, "Nah," but that happens. I also like to so it is about the brotherhood and that obligation, but it's also about disappointment. It's about putting everything on the line, your work ethic, and it's also about relationships. And I want to throw out Isabella Rossellini, who I think is magical, and of course she looks like her mom and probably her dad too. But
she looks so much like her mom in this movie.
Yeah,
like
there's
more so.
One scene I was like, oh my god, that is like
one where she's
Stromboli.
Yeah, she's on the phone.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh my god, that's Ingrid. Like, so much like her mother.
I always think that they sound alike too. Like, obviously they have different accents, but I think the tone of their voice and like kind of the diction is so similar.
And such great actresses too. And I mean, it's almost unfair to compare anybody on the planet to Ingrid, but Rossellini, I mean, of course, Blue Velvet, she's done tons of things, just a legend. And I wish she had a better role, because I think she's kind of the moral center of the film, and actually kind of the immoral center, because
it's
she
funny
plays
you say that, because I mean,
well, I'm thinking about something. I won't spoil just in case people haven't seen it, but she does play like the the ethical center. Although when this happens, it is a little late in the game, so she
Mhm.
could
Right.
have she could
Which
have
you
done
kind
this.
of wonder what her motives are in that moment, though.
Oh yeah,
You have to wonder if she's holding her husband Pascal to account, or if she's trying to hurt him. It's I think it's a little ambiguous. I don't know. I don't even know if I would go so far to say she's. I don't know if I agree with that she's.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I think it's like she's wounded in that moment because they've been found out, and and she knows that her husband knows, and I think it was maybe to make her husband look bad, to get back at him more than to hurt Secondo. But I definitely think if she truly thought that it was wrong, or thought that Secondo was being used, she would have told him before. So I think
she had the opportunity.
It was really she was wounded and she lashed out at her husband in that moment.
Yeah, I agree with Jill on this.
Yeah. I would say
too,
honestly, Primo, I think he's the moral center here. If we're gonna label anybody that, because if anything, he is true to what he believes in, and he's not going to compromise at all. And that means assimilating. He's not going to assimilate. And so I feel
he's not going to serve two starches. He just absolutely refuses.
No. And so I think that, he's stubborn and that's frustrating, but really this is a story of assimilation. Pascal across the street, he's Italian, but he's assimilated. He has compromised his and that's a form of survival. I'm not going to knock anybody for doing that, right? But I'm not you don't want to demand that of someone, and Primo's not going to do that. I
think Primo and Secondo are like such a good contrast. Secondo is kind of in the middle of Primo and Pascal in terms of these are at opposite ends. They're two men who know who they are and what they want, and they're going about it in a different way. And that's where the conflict comes in. I think at first when I was watching this, I thought maybe we were in like a codependent relationship kind of situation. But by the end, it became clear that like that is not the dynamic, because Primo knows who he is. He's not expecting any of this from his brother so much as like Secondo just hasn't figured out what it is that is his American dream.
Right.
What are his goals. And so he's just kind of caught between wanting to please his brother and wanting to do this for his brother who knows what he wants, and wanting to try and maybe mold himself into a different kind of man.
Right.
But he's still he's really caught between these kind of two different ideals, and he doesn't know which way to go.
Well,
so he ends up hurting people because of it.
Right. Well, and he wants Primo to have his dream, but he knows that the way to get it is not the way that Primo wants to do it. And so it's that conflict. One thing
he thinks that Primo needs to be managed. He thinks that Primo would not function. And there's a great scene with Pascal Ian Holm near the end where they talk about the worth of Primo, Secondo, and Pascal. And I think they really nailed it. Primo is Primo. He is he has that integrity. He is an amazing chef. He could probably work at any restaurant. Now he is definitely a behind the line in the kitchen kind of staff, and he's going to do things. He's uncompromising, going to do things on his terms, but he's got the goods. He can deliver it. So what else can everybody else do? Yeah.
Right. But the minute you pull him out of that and you try to make him fit into whatever Americanized Italian food that Pascal is serving, Primo ceases to be Primo. So that's the thing, is that you can't.
Yeah. And he has his problems.
That's right.
He's shy. He's introverted. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, can you survive in America being an introverted chef? I mean, like if you're in the right situation, if say one of these celebrity chefs today hired him, now I don't think they were around in the 50s, but But no, I think it's great because there's that ambiguity with all the characters, including Rossellini, as we just talked about, even Minnie Driver too. You know, her character is very conflicted. You know, should she be loyal? Should she not? I think not, but I'm not going to make decisions
I mean,
for
he was
her character.
screwing Rossellini's character to get, you know, to get shit to
He's
serve in
definitely
his
not the moral
restaurant.
center.
No.
Exactly.
I mean, she, you know, but I mean, but also like he was doing it, you know, he was cheating 100%, but also like, you know, at what point is he like, she's the patron lady that's, you know, helping, you know, put cheap liquor in his restaurant, you know, like he's screwing her to get the shit he needs for the restaurant, you know? So I don't know. There's a lot there, but one thing I do want to talk about before we move on is that last scene.
Yes.
And
the omelet scene.
The omelet scene. Now, if you have not seen this movie, it's spoilery, although it's spoilery, but we're going to talk about it. This movie's old.
That 96 world.
That scene, one take. It's like 5 some odd minutes. And it is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen.
It's wonderful.
And I don't think there's a word uttered. And we witness Tucci's character, Secondo, you know, making breakfast after the big party. And a lot of shit happened at the end of that party. And we see him make that omelet in real time. And there's no faking this. You know, we see him crack the eggs. We see him season it. We see him whisk the eggs, put them in the pan. It's almost like watching Tucci always reminds me a little bit of Gene Kelly, and watching him pull the plates down and take the skillet off of the fire. Everything he does is almost like he's dancing, right? And then quietly
dance,
I mean, it's just like he knows where everything is. He pulls the plate down, he pulls the fork down, the bread. I mean, it's like it's fluid. It's
it was like it was his own home kitchen.
Yes,
it's so natural.
And then when Primo walks in, you know, no words, get up, I'm going to grab another plate, you know, and they've had this fight and everything is up in the air, right? Everything has changed. And the two of them sit down and share that meal together. And the simplest meal ever, which Italians don't eat a lot for breakfast because they, you know, they eat, you know, big at night, they eat late. So in the morning, breakfast is not a huge affair. So that was a little bit of authenticity, but also like cooks in a kitchen, they don't make elaborate meals for themselves, you know. And one of my friends is
I don't know about that.
Well, no, not always though. I mean, one of the big things, like eggs are a total staple with chefs. And so, yes, they make elaborate meals, but like,
so
it's not uncommon.
Yeah. The best meals were when they made them for us. Yeah.
Well, but it's not uncommon though for them to whip up something super simple like that. And also like, it takes great skill to make eggs really well. And I don't know, it was just a beautiful scene, and to have them put their arms around each other, I don't know. It was a lovely way to end the movie. I thought it was fantastic.
I also loved that the film ended in a really ambiguous way. You don't know what's going to happen to any of these people after this. And like, I know lots of people like things to end wrapped up in a nice little bow. I personally like kind of having all those question marks. And then you get to spend time thinking, well, what do I think is going to happen? What do I think, you know, is next for these characters? That's just more fun to me.
Well, I think the most important we know the answer that matters. The answer that
They love
matters
each other.
is
Yeah.
they love each other and they're okay. Now,
Yeah.
are they gonna,
They
are
probably
they
had many,
gonna,
many spats, you know.
yeah, are they gonna stay together and go to Italy? Are they gonna stay together in Jersey? I don't know. You know, but that doesn't matter because at the end of it all, they understand one another and they're still brothers and they still love each other. So
Yeah, and one thing we just happened, Jill and I happened to be talking to somebody yesterday about representation on screen. And one thing I think that's interesting about this film, and need to move on to Chef after this, is that first off, we have a great cast, but it's an Italian American movie, and I think Tucci is the only Italian American in the cast. Now, I don't know how many Italian Americans were working in Hollywood, but the thing is, Shaloub,
is Lebanese.
Lebanese, Mark Anthony is Puerto Rican, I believe. Puerto Rican, or I know he's played Cuban. I don't know, but
I'm looking
he's
this
big
up.
in Miami. Yeah. So, and then of course Ian Holm is British.
Wild casting decision. Wild.
That was a weird. So I think the casting was weird. Now, of course, these are all phenomenal actors, and you know, I think they pull it off. But you know, I think it would have made today. They would cast different people. Tucci and
Puerto
Shaloub, though.
Rican.
Puerto
We
Rican.
were correct.
Shaloub is perfect as Primo, though. That's the thing is he's just such a tremendous actor, and I think that's what makes the film, the acting. So, yeah.
Ian Holm, completely wild casting, and at first I was like, "Who is he going to play it?" And I was like, "Oh Jesus, he's this." But you know, the accent's crazy.
Was the best cast.
Yeah, Rossellini is like Italian as fuck. Okay, but like Ian Holm stole every single scene he was in.
He did. Yeah, he's great.
Also, a lot of the Brazil Ian Holm was the vibe from.
Right.
Yeah, just I don't know the scene in the office with the lamp. There were some really interesting camera choices in this too, which I actually appreciated. It was, you know, it's not like you know, like Hitchcock or Lynch or it's not like, oh my God, that was the greatest filmmaking ever, but they tried some stuff that I really appreciated. There were some really cool shots that I thought were, you can just tell that both of them love film. And it was a character driven story, nothing flashy, very low budget. The copy I watched was terrible. So you know, if there's any label listening to this, get your hands on Big Night and do a decent
restore that baby.
Yeah, do a decent release. But anyways, I thought it was beautiful, a beautiful film. I'm going to be revisiting it. I would actually lump it in style and tone to something like Local Hero. You know, not at all story wise, but just kind of I know what I mean by it, but like just kind of just a movie that's about everything but about nothing at the same time. It just is just a good character study, you know, if that makes any sense. I don't know. It just I felt the same way I feel when I watch something like Local Hero. So
and since we're not having a journey call, I hope I know that some other people that had subscribed to the journey really watched this and enjoyed it. So hopefully we can continue this conversation either in our Discord or probably our Discord. Let's move on to Chef. So Chef 2014, as we established, but it feels like forever ago because there's this thing called Twitter, which, you know, it's hard to imagine Twitter being new and now being old. So it's, you know, 10 years have passed. But it's really premised on the whole idea of going viral and that having an impact on somebody's life and career. So Jon Favreau, of course, we know him from a lot of supporting roles. I think Swingers was his biggest one probably. And then he's directed, of course, he's been in the Marvel Universe. So I think that's probably why Robert Downey Jr. Was doing a favor and shows up in
Scarlett Johansson.
And ScarJo, And they're good too, but it's more about I actually think in hindsight, now that I've watched both, it really does pair well with Big Night because you have the chef on the other side of the story. So this John Favreau's character is I forget his name, Carl Casper. That's right. He is 10 years past his prime, according to a critic. And of course he's very emotional. He gets very upset about the way he's portrayed by this critic, and of course he's kept in his box by a restaurant. And actually, both these movies, Jill, I kind of could relate to our thing because he decides to do his own thing, and it's risky and it's scary. Rather than we could have made, I don't know, corporate journeys or bank journeys or something
God.
boring that we might have been able to raise venture capital and made our KPIs and all that kind of stuff. But he's just a dude, and he's a flawed individual. We see that. And Caitlin, I'm curious if you disagree. I mean, and he's a flawed parent too, and I think he's aware of that, but he's trying. I think. Anyway, Caitlin, I'm curious what you thought of Chef.
Well, I liked it less than I liked Big Night. I think the thing that kind of really stuck out for me was that as much as it had great shots of food preparation, I felt like this film was less about food and more about, like, it felt like it was about Jon Favreau maybe not liking that he was getting negative feedback on his creative output, and also doesn't like the media environment of Twitter. And so it was giving just like aging man cranky about world.
Old man yells at cloud.
Yeah, it was very much that, and so a lot of it just like it didn't really speak to me on any level. Again, loved the shots of the food. I really wanted like a pop-up video style kind of thing telling me what is he doing, what is he making, because it all looks very good and I want to know more. But I think the narrative, it just kind of failed for me, and I wasn't really resonating with it, and I was just kind of frustrated with this adult man and his decision making, and also with what lesson does he learn. I don't know that he learned the right one. It really felt like the film was kind of leaning into criticism bad. And you should never criticize anything when like what he doesn't with, I don't know that the film knows this, but he definitely doesn't learn this. The criticism was necessary to kick him out of his rut. I mean, the man was making chocolate lava cake at a high-end restaurant, and he needed someone to say, you're better than this. You have limitless potential and you're not reaching it. He needed that 2-star review. And if he hadn't gotten that, if the reviewer had done what, Casper wanted him to do, which is consider how hard everyone is working, which is valid,
right? Yeah.
He would have just kind of placated him, and he wouldn't have been happy. At the end of the movie, he's happy. He's making the food he wants to make, and he's expanding his horizons. That never would have happened if he hadn't gotten a negative review. And so criticism is important to expanding horizons and improving creative output and pushing the boundaries. And I wanted the film to come down on that and have that be the lesson. But it didn't. And that was really disappointing for me. So it really just felt like man working through personal issues.
Yeah. I didn't get to watch it this time, but I do remember when it came out and there was quite a bit of chatter about it. And actually we had on my old website, we had someone who reviewed it for us. And I remember them being kind of critical of it. Kind of felt more like you said, Jon Favreau dealing with criticism on his own work. And kind of his way of like thumbing his nose at that. So it sounds like maybe
some Marvel reviews, he's a weird. I don't really. I'm not like a Favreau fanboy or anything. I haven't really.
He's either really good or really bad.
And sometimes cringy, I'd say. But
he gets into cringy territory for sure.
No, but not here. I mean, well, of course, I think this is a more self-aware of flaws film than a lot of films he's been in, and Swingers is one of the most notorious of those. I do think that I do like the way they use food to maneuver
Mhm.
through this, and it is also a very entertaining watch. You know, it flies by. Like I think, and I'm not comparing it to Big Night. Big Night is far above and beyond, but Big Night, you know, it requires something of the viewer. It asks, it's challenging. It challenges you, just like we just discussed. You know, it's ambiguous. So Chef, it's not. Chef, it's pretty pat. In fact, I think if I were going to be critical of something of Chef, it would be the way it ended, which I won't go into here. I'll just say it was too pat of an ending. There's
Mhm.
another character, so the critic character, his arc is really not, I don't think, earned. But I do think it's fun, and I love Miami and food trucks, and you know the Cuban sandwiches. I guess you know
It
they
made
had.
me want a Cubano real bad.
Me too.
So
We've been to
listen,
the restaurant they went to in Little Havana. I
Oh
said
yeah.
almost in
I
Cuba, and
love me a
it is
Cubano,
amazing.
but
Yeah.
I have to admit, I hate food trucks. I do.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's
I
fair.
do. I
Well, they're
hate food
not good for you.
trucks. Well, no, it's no, like and I have to say this. I have to say this because I don't want anybody to think I'm an absolute asshole. I hate food trucks. Um, but I also realize that food trucks are often a way that people that don't, I know that there's a lot of, you know, minorities who that's how they can get their business going, right?
Mhm.
So, because there's so many restaurants, I mean, even here in Atlanta, that started out as a food truck because that's an easier way. It's hard to get a loan. It's hard, you know, all of these things. Rent is insane. So I fully acknowledge that what I'm saying when I say I hate a fucking food truck, that this is allowing people to be a business owner and to make their food and to sell it. Um, That said, nothing pisses me off more than getting in line at a food truck, paying
Mhm.
$17.95 plus tip for a fucking grilled cheese, and then waiting another 45 minutes for it. And when I get it,
With a
it's like,
pager. Yeah.
it's like, huh. So I just spent 2 hours waiting on a grilled cheese at a food
Mm.
truck, and I could have made like it just makes me like irrationally mad. It's always expensive, and it's like I want to go to your counter service and order this, and I'll pay the money, but I don't. There's only like one person in there working, and it's like I'm waiting an hour for my food. And I always tip. I take care of them, but
Mhm.
when I see a food truck roll up, it's like my soul just leaves my body. So I just had to throw that out there. It's me being cranky Jill. Cranky Jill yells at Cloud, but I just, you know, anyway, the premise of John Favreau in a fucking food truck
With
making
his
food
child. His
with
child
his
Yeah.
is working the
child
grill.
Child
is
labor.
like,
Yeah. Like
it's
it's like
kind of
food trucks are okay if it's a
now,
family business.
Well,
I
I
see
am
child
children
labor
all the
was not
time.
applied to family is a thing I
right.
learned this week.
Okay.
So I'm a huge Bob's Burgers fan, as
Yeah.
you know. And so their kids work in the restaurant and that's
Mhm.
part of it. But there is
Mhm.
actually an episode. I feel justified in my food truck hate because Bob also hates food trucks. And there's actually a whole episode about how much he hates food trucks. And he ends up going out and like blowing their savings on a shitty broken down food truck to like, if you can't join them, beat them. Anyways, that's enough.
Well,
I'm done.
I think on the subject of food trucks and film, let me. So I did enjoy Chef. I mean, I didn't love it. I didn't even really strongly like it, but you know, it's fine for what it was. But if you want a good food truck film, Mike Lee's Life is Sweet is
Okay.
the film for you. I don't know if either of you two have seen it,
Mm-mm.
Not
but it's in the 80s, and somebody's, you know, so this is before food trucks. I think it was 87, 88 or so. So it was before Naked and, you know, Secrets of Lies, and you know, all the big
mhm.
Mike Leigh films. Of course, he had some great films back then too. But yeah, Life is Sweet, and it's about family. So I would actually, if you want a good food truck movie about family, like there's a big food truck genre, that That'll be my parting words: is that
Food,
life is
food
sweet.
truck cinema. That's where if we do food truck cinema,
Food
I'm gonna
truck
be like, I'm
festival.
gonna like, I'm gonna
Well,
like be in the hospital that week or something.
it's just
I'm
this
gonna be
movie,
like,
just Life is
it's just
Sweet.
this one movie.
And yeah,
Yeah.
chef is optional, but we. So anyway, great discussion. Sounds like we all love Big Night, and yeah, and I think that's agreed. Even though I'd seen it before, I would love to see a restoration and some sort of like limited release. I would
I
jump on
want that
that, and
timpano.
I want the
When
timpano. It
when
should
he
come with
starts
timpano.
when Primo starts saying what he's doing, and Secondo's like, "We don't have time. We're not doing this. No, no, no." And when they're just chucking shit into it, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what all are they putting in this thing?" It's like
Everything.
meat,
They put
eggs,
everything in that
cheese.
thing.
It's like I'm pretty
It's like-
sure they also put in lasagna. Like I think they
Yeah.
made lasagna and stuck that in there. It was like an other pasta. There was other pasta they put in there, I think. Like, I don't know. There was a lot going on.
I described
think-
it to my husband as gumbo pie.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah, it's like
everything
Italian
was in
shepherd's
it.
pie. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I think and I don't want to go back to talk, but I just had to bring this up because I
Yeah,
forgot.
yeah.
But the thing that really cracked me up, because we were surprised the same time the dinner party was surprised, was when they wheeled out the pig.
Mm-hmm.
We never saw the pig. I don't think we saw them prepping it.
No.
We didn't see that. We saw the fish. We saw them making the timpano, but we never saw the fucking pig.
Yeah.
No.
You see it in Chef.
Yeah, I
when
was mad that both of these movies made me see dead
but when
pig
they
head. That
but
bummed
when
me
they
out.
wheeled it out and it was like the big and everybody was freaking
Yeah.
out because it was after the timpano. I laughed so hard. I was like, where the fuck did they pull that out? I didn't see the pig. Like it just showed up.
Yeah, we
Anyways.
should have. So I didn't remember the pig from either movie, but I guess if we had gone to Where Does the Dog Die, they would have said
I
it was
should have done it.
Yeah. So
Hey, I've been to a party where they got, it wasn't the apple in the mouth pig, but where they did it was actually a Cuban family and they did the whole dig the pit and put the whole pig in the pit and cook it all day long, and then you dig out the pig. I've actually done this twice. Once at a luau, but this was at a party at a house. And it was great. The pork was fantastic, but then seeing it
yeah.
pulled out and it's got its little like hooves and everything, like that was a little weird.
Yeah. So
I
on
was
that
like,
note,
on that note, I was like, oh god, look at the hoof. But this pork is delicious, but
hooves. Well, Caitlin, it's great talking to you. It's been a long
This
time
was
coming.
awesome.
We've wanted to have you
Thank
on
you so much.
so many times, so I'm glad this worked out. So I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask where people can find you online these days if they want to.
You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm at Kate Strong, Kait Strong.
And also, you're on. We were talking about this before we recorded. You're on Jill's starter pack
Jill,
for Blue
need a
Sky.
starter pack of film people, and
Go follow. Yeah.
I'm on that starter pack. There's also great people in that starter pack. Find Jill on Blue Sky and look it up.
Sorry,
can
my
people
dog's
find you,
barking,
Jill?
and I'm trying to. I was trying to mute, so I didn't. You don't hear.
It's
I don't
all
know
good.
if you hear her, but I'm on Blue Sky, Biscuit Kitten, and I have that starter pack. I think it's just called Film.
Yes.
and I've put some people on that. That's a really, really great way to get tapped in, and I'll reshare it. But also there's some other film people that have put together other ones, so you can get a more variety in who you're following. And I'll try to share those as they come across my feed. I've been trying to amplify those as much as possible so that we can all find our various little worlds we want to be in. And Aaron, you've dipped over onto Blue Sky. I'm telling you, that's where it's at, man.
I've found this. It feels like the old, so like the 2014 Twitter days.
It does feel like early. It feels more like 2011 Twitter, which was like the film community was so good. It was so good.
we'll see what happens. But yeah,
Yeah.
for now, I mean, I don't want to spend time knocking Twitter and get into that whole ordeal. But yeah, that was really not becoming a great place for film discourse. So I'm grateful for Blue Sky and seeing a lot of my old friends again, including you, Jill. You're a great follow.
Hey.
I mean, if it weren't for your Twitter account and all the awesome stuff, this wouldn't happen
No, that's how we
because
met.
in fact, I clicked a thread of hers and I liked everything. And I was like, wait a minute, I did this like 8 years ago, or I don't know, 7 years ago. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm blowing up Jill's notifications again. It feels like old times. So yeah, we're over there. You can find the other links in the show notes. But great talking to you, Caitlin. And
Thanks for having
look
me.
forward to the
Caitlin,
next
this is
journey.
awesome.